it's fulfilling. I kind of have a little bit of a parental instinct towards these. I mean, people have a tendency to look at oysters and not see them as animals, but that's what they are. They're animals, and it's very, very fulfilling to take something from a baby and be able to tend to it, to nurture it, and to give it the best environment it possibly can, and over the course of years, see it grow, see it do well. Yes, it's hard work, but there's just so many intrinsic benefits that come with it. I mean, look at the location we're in right now. I mean, who wouldn't want to work out here?
What happens is you buy seed from a hatchery, and a hatchery is a completely other part of the industry where a facility will basically start an oyster from spat and grow it into what you see as a product. So what you do is you basically take that small product and you put it into a vessel that contains them to the point where they don't blow away, because they're light like a snowflake when they're real young, and they're just like susceptible to like being taken away in the current. So you keep them in a vessel. There's all different types of gear that people use, but basically from that point you grow it until it gets to be of a size that it can fend for itself, and then they go into trays. And from the point that they're in trays, they get larger to where they're 2.5 inches to 3 inches in size for product to pick up, and then you try to get them out the door and sell them.
Support it. It really does a lot of good, both for the economy and for the environment. I mean, the Cape is famous for its seafood and stuff, but when you go to a restaurant, ask where your oysters are coming from. Are they coming from another state, or are they supporting your neighbor, the farmer down the street who is out here growing his product?
I mean, I think we've seen exactly what happens when the fishing industry goes away. We're known for cod at one time, and now the cod fishery's been completely decimated. And using our hatchery and having these local farmers, we have an industry on Cape Cod that's year-round and has great jobs for people who want to have a family here on Cape Cod.
Over 80% of the seed that's needed on Cape Cod comes from the ARC hatchery, and that's not just for the farmers, that is also for the towns that are using the seed to support the wild and recreational harvest.
So what we're doing at ARC is we're basically taking the life cycle of an oyster and kind of flipping it upside down, more or less. So an oyster typically spawns in July and August, and we begin spawning in February, and that way we can have our seed to the oyster farmer in time for that good growing season of the year. So we'll give them a baby oyster that's, say, the size of a quarter in May, and on average 1.5 years from then they'll be ready for market. And that helps us to get the animals on the farms when algae is most abundant in our waters.
55% of the state's oysters are grown here on Cape Cod. That was worth $14.9 million last year in 2017. And when you factor in all of the shoreside support, so buying equipment, buying seed, and then where the oyster goes in terms of selling it at a raw bar, that's worth over $30 million to the Cape Cod economy. Shellfish, and oysters in particular, are amazing at helping to clean our waters. An oyster can pump 50 gallons of water a day. The water comes into the oyster, and anything that's in the water, algae in particular, stays with the oyster, and the clean water leaves the oyster. And that algae is using all of the nitrogen that we are so worried about being in our estuaries. So once you harvest those oysters, you've taken the nitrogen out of the system.
The problem we're experiencing Cape Cod is an excess nitrogen loading of our waters, and that comes from septic systems, golf courses, lawn fertilizers. That increased nitrogen load creates an abundance of algae, which creates a phenomenon called eutrophication, which is a clouding of the upper stratum of the water table. It prevents light from getting through the water. With an oyster, microalgae is their food. Natural populations of shellfish are at 1% of historic levels, so it's important to reestablish those populations to help combat this excess algae.
A lot of towns on the Cape are looking to use oysters to help solve their water quality problems. They do more than just clean our water. Oysters also help stabilize shorelines. So there's a lot of projects going on to restore oyster reefs.
We also have products that help to restore the natural population, specifically called remote set. So we're taking recycled sea clam shell or oyster shell, and we're convincing the oysters to attach to that shell and then putting that in critical areas where we're trying to reestablish oyster reefs. And we've seen great results in many different sites, but specifically Mashpee, where they've completely stopped fish kills in some of their embayments.
I don't think oysters are the solution. The oysters are a good way to get from today to a point where we have clean water coming out of all of our wastewater.
The primary thing in selling shellfish is to get people to try it. People develop tastes for shellfish very similar to how they develop tastes for wine. You have to start somewhere, and then they sample other shellfish that are grown in different environments, different waters. They develop different tastes. Some are saltier, some have a more briny, earthier taste, and everybody's a little different.
Oysters are very much like wine grapes, where they're all the same species, but they're based on the conditions in which they're growing. So whether it's the water quality, the algae that they're eating, the amount of fresh water, the gear they're being grown in, that dictates the different tastes of all the oysters.
Every oyster should have a nice deep cup, a flat top. The deep cup means it's meaty and it's got a lot of brine in it. You want to avoid anything that looks dry.
One of the best ways to get recipes for eating oysters is when you're out on the flats harvesting, to talk to the people around you, because everybody loves to share their favorite recipe, and everybody has a special ingredient that they put into their Rockefeller or their fried oysters or whatever they're eating. Everybody has a special way that they love to make them.
I just personally do like them on the half shell, maybe just cold, maybe a tiny bit of lemon and a beer. I think that's the best way to eat an oyster.